You do whatever you feel comfortable. So,
We're ready to start?
Yep.
All right.
You might want to sit in there with them.
Sure. Okay. Once you sit down there, I'll moderate the side.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Put the three people.
Because then you're all on the camera.
Okay, very good. Okay.
And you're live right now.
All right, we are live. Let's celebrate life. So, oh, beats me good. All right, so I would like to introduce our distinguished panel, which would be easier for me with some than with others, because I don't know everybody. I love introducing people I don't know. Let's start with Marcel, who is described on this piece of paper here as being a big advocate. Frankly, I think he's average sized best. Really not that big, but a big advocate for mental health. So his spirit is big. So he's also one of the co-founders of Wings of Change. And I'm very familiar with Wings of Change because I'm from Barrie, right? And Barrie is now synonymous with Natalie Harris. And so I'm very familiar with the terrific work that Natalie has been doing. Read her book, blew my mind, use it now, fairly routinely offer it to people when they're ready. And so I'm very, very happy to have Marcel joining us. Marcel's going to provide the paramedic perspective. He's been a paramedic for 21 years, suffered for PTSD with 14 of those years, and has gone off work since September 2015.
Well, first I'd like to thank Bill, Gary, and Lynn for giving me the chance to share my journey. I met them last October at a conference in Kitchener, and I've been in contact with them since then. This is my first time doing public speaking. I've done spoke to paramedic student classes regarding my journey and how to prevent burnout. And their reaction was quite surprising. Since it was the end of the year, they were hoping to get that at the start of the year. So I shocked quite a few of them with reality. And this is my dog Tegan. And as Bill said, like some people ask, like what's a dog for and all that. Like, I've always been kind of a smart-ass kind of guy. So I'm ready for the opportunity to share these two lines. The first one is the dogs for sexual addiction. Just to see their reaction. And the second one is it's a idiot sniffing dog. So I'm just waiting for the opportunity that I'm not in a good mood to kind of let them have it. It's none of their business. I get a lot of respect for the dog, although there's always those people. So this is me at 18 years old, going my first day as a paramedic on my own at 18. I graduated in '94 from the ambulance emergency care program because there was no paramedics before. We were like a Band-Aid on wheels, put them on a stretcher and go. The day of my graduation, I got hired by Sudbury, and then '95 from Berkeley, where I was till 2015, where I couldn't work anymore. So early in my career, I had two calls that involved the death of two children. One of them was my brother-in-law's little brother who got hit on the highway. He was in pieces. His parents were there. I didn't have kids at the time. It did really affect me, but not as much as in 2001 when I had my own kid. I had a 4-year-old who got ran over in a parking lot from head to toe, and I saw him take his last breath. When I dropped him off in Emerge, I just did my job. I walked to the garage beside the ambulance, and I collapsed. I just couldn't take it anymore. It was just too much for me to handle. I noticed that that call affected 60 different families through the whole system of the events of what happened. So I wasn't by myself. But the doctor gave me 2 weeks off right off the bat. But then my manager told my coworkers he didn't understand why I was off because it was my job. If he would have told me right in front of me like that time, I would have killed him with my bare hands. So I put on my boots and went back to work. And I tried to find a different career because after having those 3 kids, I knew that it wasn't what I signed up for. So the aftermath of symptoms is the same as everybody else was saying before I talked. I was bullied and harassed by management. Workplace stigma highly present. People just saying like, well, it's our job, you got to do it. So kind of hide it. So I did it good pretty much for 14 years. But 2 out of my 3 partners where I picked up those kids left soon after. Because they didn't say they had struggling with the call, but now I can see it why they left. And it shows different career totally. So to me, look at that again, I should have did the same, but it's a hard career to leave. So my coping mechanism while working, I was on antidepressant for 7 years, started to abuse alcohol, self-medicated to help me sleep, used dark humor. That really hit me a few years before I left. One of my regular partners, a good friend of mine, we went to a call, and I said something that his reply was, "Oh my God, Marcel, you're sick to say that." To me, I guess at the time it was kind of funny, but it was a way of coping with stuff. To look at it now, like it was like really bad, but I never noticed it before. And wishing I was dead. A 20-minute drive to work, to a 2-lane highway. I don't know how many times I was getting in my car to go to work. Transport coming. Transport's going to win. I'm not going to feel anything. Everything's going to be over. But I managed to keep going, and I avoided that situation. Thank God. So the cup under a leaking tap. Highly emotional. I would cry to a lot of things that was just like not normal for a guy to cry to. Cry to songs, cry to just little things, and I knew something was wrong with me, but I didn't have a clue what it was. One day my kids asked me when we were sitting having dinner if I ever saw something bad. I broke out crying. I had to leave, and my wife explained to my kids why I was crying, because I never explained to them what I went through and what I saw. And then people would ask me, "What's the worst you've seen?" I would cry every time. And that's why I go to colleges to talk to the students so they don't ask that question to their preceptors or their coworkers when they start, because they're all like, "Oh, I want to see this, I want to see that, I want to see a bad accident." I just tell them, like, ask them what's the funniest thing you've seen, or like what's the best thing you've seen. Never ask them what's the worst you've seen. So that was another thing that I knew something was wrong. Never talk to your therapist. I continued to work for 21 and a half years without talking to anybody to get help. Big mistake. And my last day of work, my last call was a cardiac arrest, which I had to turn around after we worked on the patient for 20 minutes, turn around to the husband and tell him that there's nothing else we can do. Death notification, when police do it, it's the worst thing to do, but we have to do it. When after we've done working on it, we have to turn to the family and tell them there's nothing else we can do. That broke my heart every time, but it was getting harder and harder. And marriage breakdown, well, that's obvious because all first responders, the divorce rate is so high because of all the things we see, and you just take it home, and the family suffers also. So the days after, I left work. Was given 3 weeks off. By a doctor in Merge, and then I went to see my family doctor the week after, and he told me that he didn't understand why a doctor that didn't know me gave me 3 weeks off. I was dragged to Merge. I couldn't even walk. I couldn't talk. I couldn't do anything. I was like, I had crashed and burned apart. A week after that I left work, I went by the base and there was nobody there, so I said, this is my opportunity to go to my locker and empty it. So I took a pillowcase, threw everything I owned personally in there from my locker. And when I locked my locker again, I said, this is it. I'm never going back. I'm never coming back here again, and I never did. That was a week after. That's 2 years ago. My decision was made that I couldn't do it anymore. I definitely can't do it anymore. Then I was isolated. Spent 4 months in my basement drinking. The only time I would get out pretty much is to go to the beer store and buy beer. It was hell. And self-medicate, obviously, to sleep and to cope every day. Financial worries. My sick time was running out, and then we had a gap of EI between short-term and long-term. WSIB didn't even come into play yet. I was too weak to fight them. Everybody was getting denied, so I said, well, there's no point of applying. Then WSIB finally kicked in, saved my life. Bill 163. I'm one of over 600 in Ontario that have been approved by WSIB in the last year, which is a big deal. 600 in 1 year. That's a lot of people. And that's sort of the people that came out and that need help. There's so many that are working that don't. They don't want to do a claim. They don't want to be targeted at work. There's all kinds of stuff. But there's over 600 already. And received treatment. Lost all my friends. No association with coworkers because it was a toxic place. Everybody's negative. They're all bitch about work even when I was gone. I just couldn't take it anymore. So now I don't have any affiliation with work at all. I couldn't watch the news or TV shows like Night Watch. I'd love to watch them. Just can't. Hard to explain to the family. It was really hard to explain to why I couldn't work anymore. My parents, I've been working since I was 13 years old. I was on the road at 18. Like everything, nothing ever happened to my family. We're always, like everything, we always had good luck with everything. So I had to explain to them like why I couldn't work, and it took a long time for them to realize can't work anymore. Got rid of my uniforms and work-related items. That was a good time. Put a little gas on it and threw a match on it and watch it burn. And it relieved so much of my stress and anxiety to watch that go away and saying that I can't go back to work because I don't have anything to go back with. No more fun stuff, hunting, fishing, hockey. Didn't do anything of that. Co-worker of mine started a GoFundMe page for when my gap was coming for EI. He didn't tell me until it was well into a few weeks, and he raised enough money to make me get to my long-term or WSIB, which if it wasn't for that, I would have lost everything. And time to get better, psychiatrists, therapists, and psychologists. I went to homework, which was really good because it helped me with grounding skills and my addiction. Well, not addiction, because I could go without it. I call it abusing alcohol. Meditation, Bill 163, as you saw in Jill's picture, Queen's Park, I was there when they announced it. It was quite the best moment of my life at that point. And I got Tegan, which she helps me so much. And then I found peer support, which a lot of people said when they talked, it was the Me Too. When I got to the Wings of Change, when you're talking, somebody said Me Too. That was the two biggest words I could hear get into my head saying wow, it's not just me. And then doing this, sharing my journey, it's very therapeutic for me to share because I know I'm helping some people to not get to this point where you're talking to other people. I wish I'd be just sitting there and not talking. And I know I didn't know how I would react to see the bad calls. I talked to a therapist if I didn't feel right. That all our first responders, we're all toxic no matter what. We always go to the worst time of people's lives. Every call, they don't call you just to have a coffee and have a good time. It's not a scene on TV like I thought I was when I was 17 years old and decided to do this. The stress of doing all our paperwork and all that from the Ministry of Health, you're criticized for every little thing you do, which is the worst stress you can have. You can do a call and be perfectly fine, but it's the aftermath of paperwork because they have weeks to go through it, the same as the cops that once they have a quick decision to make, lawyers have like a year to pick it apart. And I was way too young to start have this responsibility at 18. My first child that I picked up on the highway that got hit, I was 19 and she was 15. So just way too young for that. How does it feel to see someone die, take their last breath? I didn't know how to get the sound of someone screaming when they're pulling them and twist the body up in a wrecked car. I would ever know how it feels to clean up that much blood. I didn't know how to tell someone that there's nothing else you can do for their spouse for 50 years. How would I ever know how it would feel having a SIDS and counting the minutes that have left to go home to her own baby? That happened to me a couple times, and I never wanted to go back to work because I just wanted to be with my own baby, seeing that somebody lost their own baby. How would I ever know how it feels to treat someone who just killed a family because they decided to drive drunk? I didn't know how it would feel to know how someone who committed suicide and had a picture of their children beside them. How would I ever know how it feels to arrive at someone's house and sharing their worst day of their life? How does someone know how much they're counting on you to save their one's life? Because when they see you, you're like God to save them, even if there's nothing you can do. They expect you to bring them back, and that I never thought of it because when I signed up for this, it was to save people's lives, not be able to help them. It's okay not to be okay. Heroes are human. And 10 Rod Badger Life and I've Got Your Back are my biggest people that I look up to continue every day. I've got your back. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here either, probably with Keegan, because they've helped me so much. And that's my story.
So thank you so much for that. Very powerful. Thank you. Well, what we're going to do, we're going to do 20 minutes each, and then we'll have 20 minutes for questions for everybody at the end. So our next speaker is Bruce Lacillade. Excellent. Bruce is he has a master's degree in pastoral care. He's also representing two first responder types here. Firefighter number 1, but before that, a career with the U.S. Navy. And I dare say there's a few challenges there as well.
Short.
Was it short? How long was it?
Well, just under 4 years.
Oh, okay, 4 years. It still has plenty of time. I've seen bad things happen in remarkably short amounts of time. So yeah, he is a compassionate yet realistic man, according to this biography.
I thought I crossed those out.
Well, that's not very realistic, is it?
Not as a shield.
He's also sartorially slender, with a beautiful beard, So I really appreciate that.
Second best dressed man here.
Well, I don't know. I got a whole leather jacket thing. I'm getting it between Gary's shirt and your jacket. You know, I'm starting to pick up some ideas here. Anyway, I'll toss it over to you.
You know, I talk a lot with different groups, but never so much about myself. Tell the story about what I've been through. I'm always there to listen to someone else, to give them a word, to encourage, to have a coffee with. Anyway, I'm honored to be here. Thanks, Bill, for thinking of me and asking me part of this. Hope hearing other people's experiences. Boy, do I have experiences. Sexually molested as a young teen. Vietnam veteran, 25 years in the fire service. Married twice. I lost a daughter to Agent Orange. My wife and I still argue over that. She blanks herself, I did. I was a drummer. Not a drummer, just a drummer. And I ended up playing in a jazz band, friends of my stepfather's, and that's where I was molested several times over a few years. To get away from that, I asked my mom to sign for me at 17 so I could enlist in the Navy. I wanted to play in the Navy band. They didn't want drummers back then. Played in the Navy, they got to complete high school. Good. And then they give you all these tests, and they made me a corpsman, a hospital, which is like a paramedic plus. Well, that's fine. That's fine. But then they didn't tell me that the Marine Corps is under the umbrella of the Department of the Navy, and they use Navy medical personnel. So I came back to the barracks one night. I got orders on my rack and a Marine sea bag. So I ended up, long story short, I ended up going to Vietnam with the Marines as a corpsman. I was attached to a helicopter here. We didn't do dust off. We were in the Hueys. We were the larger Sikorsky's. Primarily, we haul. We resupply the Marines, and also we take up to 18 liters at a time and transport them to other hospitals. A few times we pick up people in the field as well. I think I'm getting ahead of myself here. I also would do, well, I was at Da Nang, when you got to know, Marble Mountain Marine Air Base, just outside Da Nang. That was also called Rocket City, for the number of rocket attacks we would get. And it's a small world. I was at the Hamilton Air Show a few years ago. And ended up talking to a chap, and he and I were both huddled in the same corner at the same time during a rocket attack. I hadn't seen him and known him for like 30 years. Anyway, I'm rambling. That's why I have notes. I don't ramble. Okay, so after I got out of the military, I went back into music. Ended up with a band that came up to Canada. I'm a Yank from Vermont. I'm a true Yankee, New Englander. Came up with a band to Toronto, and we played in Toronto around different areas. I met a girl, and I had to get a real job, even though I thought I was reasonably successful. We worked when we wanted to. We did a few commercials. We did some, stuff. We weren't famous, but we were well fed. So after floating around for a few years, I ended up with the Burlington Fire Department, where I spent 25 years, 10 years on the trucks and 15 in fire prevention. I ended up sort of being forced into early retirement as the acting CFPO, acting chief of the division. During my time on the floor, I ran all the vehicles. I ran the rescue truck, I ran in the pumper, and I ran the ladder company. They were quite quick to put me on the rescue truck once I finished training, maybe because of my background. And my first call was to SIDS. Welcome to the fire department. Luckily, I didn't have any kids then, but it was still bad enough. Anyway, fine. Not telling war stories, but we want to hear stories. Okay, so I'm going to start with Vietnam first. And no blood or guts. As I said, we're attached to Marine Helo. We flew out of Da Nang. We flew supply. We picked up young Marines. And during the Easter Offensive, 1972, we were flying into the H.O.P.E Valley, picking up some Marines, the first of the night. The H.O.P.E Valley had the Ho Chi Minh Trail go right through it, so it was full of bad guys. We took a lot of fire. We always did. This time, they made us mark. You and I are in the same club. It's not a good club to be in. We both survived GSWs. They hit a hydraulic line. We auto-rotated in. Auto-rotation is where you use the kinetic energy, the slowed engine, and the rotor brake light to bring it down. It looks good on paper. When we landed or crashed, we lost the pilot and the co-pilot. They both died. And we had a litter on board. He was probably unexpected. He died as well. We spent 3 days in the ground trying to avoid the bad guys. Myself and the plane captain, the crew chief. It's one of those things that we probably shouldn't have been flying to begin with, but we were young and full of piss and vinegar, and so it's right here, all weather helicopter. Okay, we got guys down, so we'll go get them. Okay, I was 18 and I was 10 feet tall and bulletproof. Anyway, so nobody else wanted to come and fly, so it was 3 days before we picked us up. I would also rotate through the hospital at the time, Naval Support Activity Hospital in Da Nang. It was the largest combat hospital in the world at the time. It was all in Quonset House. We'd rotate through there once in a while. As a corpsman, we had a lot of weapons we picked up. And what's difficult, I don't want to talk about, but I will, is the expectants. Expectants are the common expectants. They're the ones that we knew we couldn't do anything for. And even in the field, we carry M&Ms. And we slip it between the lips. So this is cocaine. Nothing we can do. And that caused a lot of frustration. So not only did I get a chest full of fruit salad, due to that frustration, I also got a course martial. So I don't have good paper, as they say in the military. Okay. I have a general discharge on all. That's number 2. The fire service, fires are crazy, they're difficult to fight. For a number of years, I never thought too much about it. I thought about the tactics, the structure, the gallons per minute, all that type of stuff. I never thought about the lives ruined and the homes destroyed. That started to get me. And as I said, my first call was a SIDS, and that was difficult. It was in a fourplex, a group of fourplexes off the main drag. And we had difficulty finding it. And our brothers in the Anglos had difficulty finding it as well. And we worked on that child for quite a while. We say we didn't lose her because we never had her. Probably understand that. Yeah. That was difficult. I ran the pump, I ran the ladder. I love the ladder. That was cool. Not to be totally down, I got to tell a story, a true story. We got a call. This is in Burlington. We got a call for pedestrian struck, right on Plains Road. So I'm on the rescue truck. We go screaming out. Police got it as a child struck. They go screaming out. So we're first on the scene. There's an adult lying in the grass between the street and the sidewalk. And this, by the chance, he had the cast on his arm. Okay. So we go up. We start to do our assessment. What happened? What's going on? What happened? Well, I was helping my sister paint, and I fell off the ladder, and it broke my arm. No, sir. What happened now? Are you okay when you hit by a car? No, I was just out for a walk. I got tired, so I laid down. Okay, sir, you sit right here. Okay, don't go anywhere. That was one of the good ones. That was one of the good ones. Okay, you're fine. Just stay right. Don't go anywhere. I mean, think about it. It makes sense. I don't know. But on the other side, a couple of bad ones I remember, and I would always, if I drove by that street, even years later, I would kind of get a couple suicides. They were the worst, I think. We had one came in as a house fire, and I was on the hose line, and we went in through the back door of the garage into the kitchen. I happened to look over, and there was the guy with a shotgun. Right? Nothing from here up, basically. And I got in, we saved the house, and going through the house, finding all the photo albums on all the paraphernalia. The family had left him for whatever reason. We never find out. It's not our, they handle the police and stuff. And he was very, very desperate. And another suicide we had was about 20 minutes, we got the call about 20 minutes before school was out. And it was a house fire again. He set the house on fire and barricaded himself in. We had to have the police to try and help us get in. And then at the same time this is going on, we got him out as his kids are walking home from school. So he's on the street, we're working on him. Right? You guys know what it is. We're working on him, and his kid's standing there watching. That's very difficult. I don't know what the kids went through, but they're like, no, this was years and years ago, so they're adults now. Those types of things were difficult. I'm rambling. Even though, like as first responders and military, we can be the cornerstone of any community, and we really are. We're very active in a number of community events. Believe it or not, I was involved with Cops of Cancer when I shaved my head years ago. I had more hair then. But a lot of us first responders do a lot of things. Habitat for Humanity, all kinds of things we get involved in. I'm hearing the music. Is it my time to get off? A few more minutes. Okay. One of the things is betrayal that the good doctor spoke to earlier, and rejection. Being a minister now, I don't want to talk too religious, but I think of Jesus. Talk about betrayal and rejection. That when you're betrayed by your own kind. I didn't always fit in that well with some of the guys on the floor. At that time, Alex say there's about 100 firefighters and girls at the time. There's only about 4 of us that had any military experience. Now it's probably much different now. And we didn't really fit in. There were lots of stories about me. Of course, I didn't help them. They were afraid I was going to go post a line. And of course, I didn't help myself. I said, I'd never do that. I said, you see the tree line? I said, sit up there and wait for it. All right. Which, not a good answer. HR didn't want to hear that. Neither did the shrink. Right? They sent me to a forensic psychiatrist in Toronto, who proceeded to tell me how wonderful and how smart he was and how much power he had. And I just told him he was number 1 in my books, and I pointed it out to him, using a couple of gestures. But but again, the assessments and the assessments and the assessments,
Yes.
and the psychological tests and all these things. And basically, I was forced into early retirement because PTSD. I do have complex PTSD, and because of the lack of knowledge of it at the time. This was in 2001. The departments didn't really know anything about post-traumatic stress. They didn't want to admit it. Plus, there's a little thing called risk management, right? And we just give them a little small payoff and get rid of them. Right? And I felt totally betrayed. The association did what they could, but then again, they didn't understand either. But moving forward, since then, I completed a couple of degrees. I'm working on becoming pilot IMD. If I was younger, it'd be plenty of heavy drinking. And we can talk about that too.
Absolutely.
Yes. From going from a high school dropout to maybe at 65, getting a PhD. 64 right now. Any single girls, I'm 64. Yeah. So I'm not going to tell any more stories about that. We've all done a hunch of calls. We know what these calls can do. We don't talk about it. We need to talk about it. That's one of the reasons I was kind of forced out. We didn't talk about it. But since then, I've completed a couple of degrees. I do counseling, pastoral counseling for a lot of veterans and first responders in the Niagara area, the Hamilton area. And it's just mostly ministry of presence. Yeah, I've got degrees. So you don't have a coffee talk to me. Yeah, me too. Okay.
Thank you. He was only in the military for a short time. Not a lot happened there. Now, the next guy I'm going to introduce has the distinction of being the only person on this panel that I actually know. And I actually don't really know Gary all that well, okay? Because, we get together every 3 months. We spend time together at an event like this. If we're really lucky, we'll get a meal together. So it's presumptuous of me to tell him that I love him. But that's the reality. Because sometimes when you meet somebody, you discover a profound soul. And that was my experience when I first met Gary. And I don't think that's some unique perception on my part. I think it's got everything to do with what radiates out from him because of the growth that he has shown. Gary is the product of all of his experiences, and he is the embodiment of post-traumatic growth. I've often observed, by the way, in my own practice, there are those who slowly improve over time. I'm not a very good psychologist, so usually it's a decade. For the occasional one, the growth takes off like a rocket. And they skip over normal. Normal ceases to be the goal. Normal's never a possibility in my office. Okay? There's no wonder. Look who the therapist is. You go from damaged to better than average. And it happens frequently. Okay? And it tends to happen suddenly. Lights go off. Boom. Plateau gets hit. Stays stable for a while. Light goes off again. Boom. Another rocket shot. I suspect that has been Gary's process at times. But I will let him tell you about his process because he knows it so much better than I do.
Those are wow. Thank you. August 26th, 1984, Dwayne Pupila was the first police officer that was murdered in the line of duty in the region of Field. And August 27th, 1984 was my first day on the police department. And my second, third, and fourth day were just kind of a blur because of all of the media coverage that was surrounding the murder of the first Field police officer and their history. And my third day on the job was doing the traffic point at a police funeral. Between 84 and 85, there were 9 police police officers in Ontario that were executed, killed in the line of duty. They called it the year of the killing, and as quickly as it started, it stopped. So, you know, there's that that awful four-letter word that we hate to use in policing. It starts with F, and it's the word is fear. And, it's safe to say today, because I'm not ashamed to say it, that from probably my very first day, I was full of fear when I joined the police department. But you know, back in those days, it was a thing. It was an emotion. It was a word that was never used, and you could never really tell anybody that you felt those kinds of fears. You know, you'd be eaten alive, and that's just by the cops. Never mind on the street. So, yeah, that was the start of my career. Was you know, really an incredible eye opener. In that, you know, I joined policing and thought, okay, I know I'd be stupid naive to think that I wasn't going to experience a lot of, you know, tragedy and witness a lot of trauma. I wasn't that stupid or naive, but you know, 33 years later, you know, when I look back at what the job did to me, I didn't sign it. You know, I went through my recruit training, and it's been my third shift on my own without a training officer. I was out working a night shift, and I experienced my first H.O.P.E attack. So, you know, here I was, a brand new kid on the job, 22 years old, green behind the ears. I just came on the job with a police officer who had ironically been stabbed to death, and I faced, you know, what almost became a similar fate to me. So I was very fortunate, and that wouldn't be the last. I had another series of incidents that occurred to me. I spent 25 years in policing before I was placed on disability and the job was taken away from me. Out of the 25 years, I worked 19 years in plain clothes and undercover. So my career was predominantly spent in specialized units, working with a small group of men and women in really high functioning teams, and we did a lot of really incredible work. It was exciting. You know, I think the reaction that happened, and I jump around a bit because like Bill's slide, this is my brain on PTSD. That's my brain. It jumps around, so try to stay with me. Sort of say the aftermath, but what happened very quickly after my third day on the job, like on my own, responding to a call was the reaction that I got from supervisors and senior officers that were present, and how they reacted to me about what could have happened. If you'd have been stabbed to death, I wouldn't have been here for you because you effed up, and this would have been your fault. It was a mistake, and you made the mistake. So I was belittled. There was no sympathy. There was no, Jesus, are you okay? It was you fucked up. And if you had died, I would have been there for you. That was sort of the support that I received at that time. You know, so from that moment forward, I kind of vowed that I would spend the rest of my career excelling, and I would be doing the most dangerous, difficult, most challenging jobs that I could in the police department, and I was going to be like super proud, and that was in my head because I was never going to experience that kind of humiliation again. And so from the very beginning, my guard was up. Anyway, I accelerated through. You know, the first year or two, I was challenged with paperwork. I couldn't get my head around all the paperwork with policing, but you know, by my third year, I was working those, and I had a lot of success. I had a lot of really good times, like I said. I'm not going to stand here and tell all kinds of stories because we could go on for hours doing that. You know, I'll summarize my career by saying that in the 19 years working plain clothes and in my 25 years out of service, I've had 7 friends and colleagues suicide. had two close friends that were murdered on the job in the line of duty, and I've seen countless others, die from other means, misadventure, cancer, and so all those things had a real tremendous effect in a negative way. And, when I was working, kind of early 90s, I was working in the drug unit, and I experienced during that time period. It was such a unique place to work, and I think it's just simply by the nature of the work that I was doing, I probably experienced at least a dozen, undocumented, unreported incidents that were extremely volatile with weapons, and it was just, we just dealt with it. There was no paper, there was no reports, there was no press. It was just, it happened, we dealt with it, and moved on. And that's just the way it was. That was the nature of the job. So, that kind of stuff, and here's how my brain works jumping ahead. So, 15 years later, when I'm sitting with a psychologist and with a psychiatrist, and they tell me, Gary, tell me about some of your traumatic events, and I say to them, I can't even tell you some of the stuff because it's really not even on paper. And if I do tell you, like, geez, I might go to jail. That's a joke. So the job took its toll, right? It had a tremendous effect on me. And in 2005, I had an opportunity to work in a unit that was called the ICE unit, Internet Child Exploitation. And it was spoken to earlier today about seniors and children. I think that's been kind of an underlying theme here as well. When I signed up, it was sort of drilled into me by a senior officer. We protect our own, we protect children, we protect seniors, we protect women, we protect the disabled, and we protect the elderly. Like we take care of the people that are challenged or that aren't able to take care of themselves if they're under attack. That's what we do. That's how we help them. All the rest of the garbage, they'll take care of themselves. They'll just get swept up. They'll get swept up. We'll come clean up the mess at the end of the day. So to see things happen like horrific torture and rape of a senior, a woman, which unfortunately we had to investigate at one point. Those things never leave you. I can't unsee what I've seen. I can't undo what I've done, and that stuff it's been driven into a superhighway in my brain. It's left this scar inside of my head, and many times I'll be on that highway subconsciously, and I know that I have to create these off ramps. I know Dr. Johnson is aware of some of the stuff that I've worked on in my recovery, and so I've had to create off ramps to make that craziness, kind of balance out and find ways of coping with that. In 2005, we had just started a unit called Internet Child Exploitation, and I was asked to become the online doer, which would basically mean that I was a young girl engaged with pedophiles and engaging in predicated chat rooms, and we would try to set up sting operations. And so early on in that unit, to validate the position that I was creating for myself, basically, I had to create a report for our senior management, our chiefs management group, in order to get funding, politics and funding. So in order for me to do that, I had to put together a presentation of the most graphic, horrific images and videos of children being tortured to prove that we needed to have this unit. So that in itself is kind of silly. It's pretty twisted to say that we need to validate or justify the need for protecting children. So anyway, it was what it was, and I did what I did. And so I did that job for a little bit. It's hard for me to talk about because I have a 21-year-old daughter in the room here today who was, at the time, one of my greatest resources, because she would have been 8 or 9, and so I didn't listen to their kind of music. I didn't talk the way they talked, and so I emulated my kids. And so that that time period really had a real negative effect on me. In 2008, I had a real bad year. It was, you know, I felt something coming on. I had been to my doctor in the early 90s. I think I spoke earlier when I was introducing one of the speakers about undiagnosed post-traumatic and untreated and you know, depression and anxiety. And I was feeling all those things. And from the early days, from probably the late 80s and the early 90s, I had already started to experience you know, some pretty horrific night terrors. And I would suffer some really severe panic attacks. And you know, it was like really from the early days on, it was like we hit the bar, we self-medicated, and you know, I was drinking, and at that time I was placed on prescription medication by my family doctor, and being treated for depression and anxiety and some sleep disorders. But you know, so that kind of carried on through the 90s and into the 2000s. So I was probably on prescription medication 18 years. And in 2008, I had sort of enjoyed some sobriety because it's safe to say that I became an alcoholic and a drug addict. And there were periods of sobriety between the year 2000 and 2008 where I was able to keep myself in some sort of a normal state of mind. But in 2008, I ended up having a close friend and a colleague, a guy I'd worked with, and we were roommates. He lost a 2-year battle with cancer in March, and he passed away. And in April of the same year, 2008, a lady that I was in a relationship with was diagnosed and died of cancer very quickly. And then in June, a friend and a colleague, you know, while on the phone with another member of our service, shot himself in the head and suicided. And then, as I said, I was in recovery at the time, and I had a AA sponsor, a man I was working with on my sobriety and recovery. In the fall of 2008, decided that he wanted to enter into a murder-suicide where he would take my life and his own life after. So when I threw him out of my house, he ended up suicidal. And I became part of the investigation because of all the cryptic, crazy notes he left around the house. Anyway, at this time, I've now been placed in the wellness unit in 2008, and I'm dealing with all this insanity, plus the previous 20 plus years of my own career, 25 years. And December of 2008, you know, just having to do a peer support debrief, a 9/11 tape of a lady who had her home broken into, and she dropped her phone with an open line to our dispatchers, and it was a brutal rape and murder of this woman, and we had to do a debrief on it. So we had to listen to the tape and debrief with the officers. And this was kind of like my last bubble in last drop of water in the bathtub that floated my cup. So a short period after that, in mid-December of 2008, I was sitting in my office, and I don't know what it was. It was like somebody had put a giant metal 50-gallon drum over top of my head and took an aluminum bat and started to hit it. That's what it felt like. Ringing in my ears. I started to cry. I was hyperventilating. I couldn't breathe. I thought I was having a heart attack. My supervisor was in the office beside me and came in and told me that, hey, I've been trying to call you, and then he seen me in the state that I was in, and I was taken to my doctor. I was placed on disability just before Christmas in 2008 or 2009. January, I entered the Homewood Health Center in Guelph. Went into an addiction treatment program, and right from that program, after 5 weeks, I went into a program called Program for Traumatic Stress and Recovery, PTSR, and that was another 8-week program for trauma. During this time, I was diagnosed with complex, cumulative, incident-related, career-ending post-traumatic stress. And so that, you know, when I was coming up to the end of my short visit in the Psychiatric Institute from January till April, and I was putting together my discharge plan, it included an upcoming judge and jury trial that I had, and my caregivers kind of laughed at me and said, I'm not sure what part you're not getting. You're not going back to work. You're not going to this trial. You're not testifying in court. You're never going back to prison. And it was kind of like somebody pulled the carpet out from under my feet. You know, it was like everything that I knew. It was everything that I had ever done. And to an extent, it was my identity. You know, I was a cop. That's what I did. That's what I was. You know, I'll tell you today, policing is what I did. It's not who I am. Not today. It's just what I did. And that's okay. You know, I've come to this place in my life where it's good. And you know, it's weird. It's a weird thing. Part of me says I would never go back and do that entire career again. And part of me says I wouldn't change a thing for anything in the world. You know, kind of created who I am today. And a lot of the gifts and the great things that I have in my life today are a result of great adversity that I've had to face. When I got out of treatment, I was under the care of, please pardon the expression, a real sick quack. And
Wait, he looks at me.
but you're one of the sickest friends I have. I say that with love. Now, this gentleman was, I was ordered to go see this psychiatrist regularly twice a week, and he had his master's degree in pharmaceuticals. So I was diagnosed with, I don't even stand here and try to list like 15 disorders that he said I had, and what he had, medications he had placed me on. You'll understand when I say that, aside from the garbage bag of drugs that I was taking legally from my new drug dealer, I was taking 1,300 milligrams of Seroquel, which is an antipsychotic, a day, which is like, I mean, if I took 50 milligrams now, I think I might pass out. So I'm taking this amount, and I'm drinking, and I'm using illicit drugs, and I'm pretty much out of control. So, and I'm feeling very suicidal and a little bit homicidal. So the care isn't the best. At the time, my union filed my WSIB claim on my behalf, and 3 minutes, here it comes. So the WSIB declined me. We reapplied, they declined me. Between 2009 and 2010, I went into 5 treatment programs and 2 treatment centers. I attempted suicide 3 times. I was arrested twice. I got the shit kicked out of me. I got beat up. I was incarcerated. I had a judge tell me that I was homicidal and suicidal, and I was denied. Bail denied, Mr. Rubie. Worst 2 words I ever heard. Anyway, in October of 2010, I came out of treatment, out of jail, and entered right back into treatment again. And I've been clean and sober since October of 2010. You know, moving forward, the things that I've learned in the short time that I've been, you know, given the gift of recovery is that all those people whispering behind my back, calling me a loser and a failure for trying to pull an early pension at 25 years and for bailing on them and for leaving them high and dry. You know, I've been told and I've learned that the average person may face 1 or 2 traumatic incidents in their lifetime, and those may or may not lead to post-traumatic stress. And a police officer who serves between 20 and 30 years will experience 600 to 900 in his career. So I'm not a weak loser, failure. I'm a very resilient man, and I'm a survivor, and I'm a winner. So, you know, I've been very, very fortunate and gifted to give back in recovery. I've worked very hard at this program with Bill and Lynn in building Badge of Life Canada. For 3 years, you know, here's a guy who was homicidal, suicidal, locked up with a criminal record, and you know, I'm a decorated officer. I have 64 commendations in my file. I've got 8 major awards, and I became that. And you know, I didn't even want to live. And suddenly, I've been invited back to the Homewood Health Center to help facilitate an inpatient residential treatment program. Like, how cool is that? So you know, like those are the kinds of gifts that were given back to me. And you know, my sole purpose today, until the day I die, my last breath will be, I just have to pay this thing forward in whatever way I can. And I do it freely, and I do it willingly. And my card's up here, if anybody ever wants to talk about anything. I'm cray-cray, so I get it. It's, reach out, come get my card. My cell phone's on there. I'm available. If I don't answer, I walk 2 or 3 hours every day because burning out my body slows my mind down. So if I don't answer, I will call you back. If I don't answer my email right away, I might be in Arizona enjoying the sun, but you will hear back from me. So, thank you again for being here, and I appreciate that you guys shared your stories. Me too. Thanks.
So, when would you like us to wrap up? Very good. Very good. Okay. I've got a question I would like to ask and hear from each of you on this. And that is, tell me the role of spirit in your recovery, given that we have 5 minutes for all of you to answer. Go. Marcel, you go. On the spot.
Spirit, when I went to home with, I said that it doesn't have to be religious. You just have to say it, like, find something that you believe in that will keep you going. I had my dog, it wasn't Tegan, but it was another dog. She was there from the day that I went down off work, and every second she was with me. And she kept me going. And that was my spiritual part of it. And I got tattooed Hope with the PTSD ribbon on my arm to every time that I don't feel good, that I look at it and say, like, there is hope, I can do this. And my kids. I said, like, have to keep going. But if the pain that I'm feeling, if I end it, it's going to pass it on to them. And that's what kept me from preventing me from committing suicide. It's just that my pain will be gone, but they'll get it from me, which I can't do. And that's why I'm here today.
The positive spirit, my wife, and me to be there for my daughter. Going back to the church, rather successfully, we were ordained. But one of the things that really struck me going through the 4 years of seminary, deacon, is that those of us in that class, we consider ourselves to be movie dealers. We all came from certain backgrounds, and it was a strong spirituality, a real brotherhood that was there. That the feelings of betrayal I had was in the guy's job as a firefighter. It was like motivating to breathe it.
I've heard it said that religion is for people who want to go to heaven, and spirituality is for people who have been to hell. So I'm a spiritual man today. And, I wake up every morning and I'm just so grateful to be alive. So my spirit soars on a daily basis. I try to express that outlook and hope, with my children, and I have a really great relationship with a lady who has children, and we like together. There's so much joy and happiness in the world that's overlooked by all the insanity that's going on. It's just so important to be grateful for the little things in life. I used to take so many of the little things for granted, but today that's what makes my spirit soar. I see birds in the sky, and I'm just like, wow, how cool. I see a rainbow, which things you take for granted, I used to take for granted. It makes my spirit soar. So.
I want to thank all of you for sharing these stories with us. As sitting and listening, I sit here with a little anxiety, as I think about the people in the audience that I hear your stories, and I'm going, oh my God, how are people out there responding? How are you, hearing these things, what triggers are going on out there. But I have this thing about triggers. I don't believe in avoidance. I don't believe in hiding. You have to be able to manage the triggers. You have to know what your limits are when it comes to confronting what the memories are. But ultimately, we can't really hide from our own histories. We can't hide from our own shadows. And we actually have to be able to face them at some point. All of your stories are about facing the shadow and bringing some light. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Bringing it out into the light where it will heal. And I think that's, the panel discussion today has been titled Hope, hearing other people's experiences. And through that, healing your own. And, very often I go to send people to a group experience, what I'll hear is, well, how's hearing other people's stuff going to help me? The answer is maybe not that much necessarily until you start to help them. You really want to start to heal yourself, try to help somebody else. And I think that's something that, the three of you very much exemplify. And I think that, something that all of us, can work on in our own healing process. So thank you very much to all of you.